Greetings from the Tiki Bar. Today we're going to look at something completely different. The Tiki history of Reno. Today we're broadcasting from my brand new Tiki space here in my video editing man cave. My interest in the Polynesian pop movement dates back 20 years or so, and I've been around long enough to see the last of our area Tiki establishments fade away into the sunset. In this video, I'll tell you a little bit about the mid-century modern Tiki movement and how it came to be, and the expressions of it that we used to have here in the Reno area. So grab you a Mai Tai and let's head off to the South Seas here on the Reno You Know. So just what was this whole Tiki thing that we're talking about? After World War II in the 1940s and 1950s, America began to have a growing interest in subjects like Hawaii and the South Seas and Polynesia. Servicemen returned from overseas with tales from exotic lands. And somehow a movement started, and tiki bars and restaurants and other themed establishments began to pop up, transporting their clientele, even for a short time, to a tropical paradise, separate from the ordinary and mundane world that they lived in. Regular folks could sip on exotic rum-based drinks and wear their favorite aloha shirt or muumuu, and basically experience an island-based lifestyle without having to book flights to Hawaii. While some of the artifacts were genuine, a good portion of it was artificial, but in general, the Tiki decor was very well done and the public bought it. The Tiki craze was in full swing by the 1960s, and it began to have effect on food and music and TV and movies and fashion. There were Tiki temples erected in almost every major American city, including in Reno. And before we move on, to be clear about the whole concept, it is good to talk about what Tiki is, which is a classic aesthetic from the mid-20th century. But it's also important to talk about what Tiki is not. Tiki is not about Jimmy Buffett, Margaritaville, and parrot heads. Not Tiki. Although the Enchanted Tiki Room at Disneyland is a special and revered place, Tiki is not all about Disney. You know those plastic brightly colored luau decorations from party stores? Tiki is not about Caribbean themes or South American themes or African or even Floridian themes. And it's not about hot rods or classic monster movies or just anything that has a tiki on it. The original movement started to die out in the 1970s as good taste and modern life started to make this design concept look dated and tired. Most of the classic tiki-themed businesses folded, and worst of all, the unique architecture that was created during this time was also wiped from the face of the earth. However, there has been a resurgence in interest in the Tiki aesthetic, and a small number of people keep it alive with home bars, special events, new music, mug collections, experimentation with Tiki drinks, DIY art, and some really cool modern Tiki bars that stay true to the classic style. Okay, so now that we kind of have a handle on what this movement is or was, what does this have to do with our area? We don't have any commercial Tiki bars anymore. Well, we used to, and our area actually has a pretty interesting history of Polynesian-themed establishments. One of the earliest examples of the style that I found in the Reno area was called the West Indies, and that was located here, very close to where I'm standing on Meadowood Mall Way, which is now Meadowood Mall Way, and where that intersects with McCarran Boulevard. In July of 1944, which is exactly 80 years ago from the date that I'm filming this, in July of 44, a dude named Frank Skipper Kent opened the West Indies very close to here, and this was his third business venture. His first was named The Skipper, in Berkeley, California, and his second venture was called Zombie Village in Oakland, California. And Reno was a pretty happening place during the World War II years, enough that we were able to draw a restaurateur from the Bay Area. Here's an abridgment of the flowery verbiage from one of the menus of a zombie village. Escape to romance. Let us escape for an hour or so to a place that I know, away from the rush of this clamorous, shrill age, to the tropical charms of unique zombie village. There are drinks that are mixed by the son of a wizard to moisten your whistle and tickle your gizzard. Luscious concoctions as mild as a zephyr, concealing a jolt like the kick of a heifer. Drinks that are smooth as the touch of white satin, persuasive and suave as the love of a Latin. The lights and the shadows conceal the deft scheming to set your thoughts drifting and get your heart dreaming of tropical moons and of swift flying fishes, of little grass houses on islands of wishes. The address of the West Indies was 5560 South Virginia Street, and it actually closed in 1954, lasted 10 years. It closed after Raymond I. Pappy Smith of Harold's Club purchased this land where the restaurant was located. The West Indies eventually reopened, and over the years, several businesses came and went in the building, including the Tiki Hoonin. Do you remember the Tiki Hoonin? I remember seeing that sign when I moved to Reno in the mid-1980s. The building itself was demolished in 1998. Hello from the Sierra Vista Tower Apartments here on 4th Street in downtown Reno. This building behind me definitely has a tiki history, for it was opened in 1974 as the Reef Inn, and it was built for $2.7 million in 1974 dollars, and it had 12 stories and 112 rooms. When it opened, it was touted as being unique to the area due to its imported South Seas motif used throughout. All the rooms sported rattan furniture and were decorated with Polynesian colors. The second floor here housed two restaurants, the Nipa Room and the Lanai Room, and also the Tiki Lounge, which had live music and dancing and seating for 122 people. The Reef had a short and turbulent life, and the whole affair was put up for auction just 2 years after it opened. The building has been many things since then, including the Pearl Resort Hotel. Today, the building lives on in a quieter incarnation as an apartment complex. And today, if you look closely on both the west and east sides of the building, you can still see the outline of the Reef's painted wave design from 50 years ago. Directly next door to the old Reef building is today's Renova Flats. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, Renova Flats. This building once had, in my opinion, the best, finest tiki-inspired architecture of any building in the Reno area. This building opened as the Tropics Inn sometime before the Reef was built next door in 1974. Check out the porte cochere and the cool upswept lines. And I love the kitschy sign that they had. But as it went with Tiki, the theme changed. Here's an ad from 1979 announcing that the Tropics Inn would now be called the Crest Inn, and there was a change of motifs. It looks like they were selling off their tropical decor here. A couple of years ago, actually in 2018, I voiced my concern online that I didn't think the tiki look of the Crest Inn was long for this world because the surrounding area was being bought up and redeveloped with a lot of old motels coming down. Well, part of the old building still survives, but the tiki look is gone. Sometimes all we have are memories. This tiki location is new to me after I started researching this video. The Primadonna Club is much revered and fondly remembered by old Reno folks. It was opened by Ernie Prim in the 1950s here on the west side of Virginia Street, and his club was the first to be licensed and approved to operate outside of Reno's Red Line. I'll leave a link to the video that I did on that subject in the description below. In 1964, the facade was changed to feature 5 towering showgirls, the one in the center being 35 feet tall. It was garish, glitzy, gloriously tacky, and probably the best casino facade of any casino owned by an individual ever. The center grille rotated back and forth. In 1970, Ernie Prim, who had become the single largest landowner in downtown Reno due to his many purchases over the years, added 5 more showgirl statues over this entrance on Sierra Street. The properties were eventually sold off to the Del Webb Corporation and later to Hilton Hotels. The ladies were all taken down, and the center gal was relocated to the roof of an adult bookstore on South Virginia Street for many years. And she eventually disappeared again, and it's been a matter of speculation by many people locally what ultimately became of those 10 showgirl statues. I'm crossing my fingers that someone has one or more of those stashed away in a barn somewhere. If you know anything, please leave a comment or email me. Okay, back to the Tiki. The reason that we're looking at the Primadonna Club is that they had a Tiki room. The Outrigger Lounge at the Primadonna Club opened in July of 1971, and newspaper accounts at the opening stated, the Outrigger Lounge, located on the street floor, is decorated in a Hawaiian motif with hand-carved tiki heads, outriggers, and 2 7-foot tiki gods at the entrance. An elevated stage allows unobstructed viewing in the show lounge, which can accommodate an audience of more than 150. Hawaiian and mainland beverages are featured. I've actually only been able to find one photo of the interior, and that's on an old brochure that I found. In 1967, a colorful character named Doug Picking opened Doug's West Indies in Carson City. It's not entirely clear to me how this West Indies related to the Reno West Indies. Doug's West Indies was a popular place in Carson City, especially when the state legislature was in session there in the capital. Captain Doug was always looking for his next entrepreneurial venture, and he had plans for a large casino in Carson City called the Windjammer. However, that failed, and he had to sell off Doug's West Indies. And as a curious side note, probably Captain Doug's biggest claim to fame were limited edition liquor decanters he produced, 46 in total, each one promoting a different Nevada brothel. Apparently, a brothel owner who was a regular at Doug's West Indies approached him about making a decanter kind of like what Jim Beam had been doing to promote his brothel. So in 1976, they started production, and they became very popular as collector's items. Each one contained only about 2 ounces of booze, at first a cream sherry, and later Doug's signature Mai Tai mix. These are still readily available on eBay and in some antique shops. So if you need a hobby and you'd like to start a collection of items that are completely unique to Nevada, look for Doug's Brothel Decanters, conceived and produced by a tiki bar owner in Carson City, Nevada. Today, the location on the corner of Carson and College Streets in Carson City is occupied by a Burger King. Another interesting location in northern Nevada was at Lake Tahoe, at the top of Harvey's, which is in State Line, Nevada, just across from the California state line. Harvey's was opened in 1944 as Harvey's Wagon Wheel by Sacramento meat magnate Harvey Gross, and he opened his first hotel tower there in 1963. When the subject of Harvey's comes up, usually the subject of the bombing in 1980 also comes up, and that's an interesting story, but just beyond the scope of our talk today. At the top of Harvey's was a restaurant called The Top of the Wheel, and there was also a tiki lounge there called the Sneaky Tiki, as was emblazoned on the mugs and bowls that are still can be seen out in the wild. The tiki lounge at Harvey's faded away, I believe, in the late 1980s, I think. And if you'd like to get your hands on one of these souvenirs, they're pretty readily available on places like eBay and your local antique store. The Tropics was a nightclub that opened here on Center Street. If you can see the letters parking stadium behind me, that's where it was, on Center Street. And it opened in the old location of another famous club, the Dog House. And the Dog House opened in 1935 back there. The decor of the Dog House was changed into a tropical island theme, and the Tropics had hula girls and tropical drinks and palm trees, and even showed motion pictures of South Seas scenery. The tropics only lasted until 1947, and the building itself lasted until 1994 when it had to come down in order to build the Calneva parking stadium. Ah, Trader Dick's. We would be seriously remiss if we didn't address this, the big kahuna of tiki establishments in the Reno area. Just like the song goes, you don't know what you got till it's gone. Dick Graves was originally from Idaho, and he owned several restaurant operations up there. And in 1954, the state of Idaho declared that slot machines were illegal in the state of Idaho. And that was a problem for Dick Graves because he had several hundred slot machines in operation around the state. So he moved to Nevada. He first opened the Nugget in Yerington, and then 3 more Nuggets: the Reno Nugget, the Carson City Nugget, and the Sparks Nugget. The Sparks Nugget was originally located right across the street from its current location on Victorian Avenue. In 1958, Dick Graves transformed the old Nugget location into Trader Dick's, naming it after himself. Vic Bergeron, the founder of the legendary Trader Vic's, sued for copyright infringement and lost. Dick Graves hired Eli Headley, who was famous back in the day for his ability to decorate in the tiki style. And today, Eli Headley's grandson, named Bamboo Ben, carries on the family tradition, and you can hire him to transform your space into a proper tiki paradise. It was Dick Graves in 1960 who bought a 16-year-old circus elephant and named her Bertha. Along with Tina and Angel that were added later, Bertha performed in the Nugget showroom for years and essentially became a mascot for the Nugget and Sparks itself. Also in 1960, Dick Graves sold the Sparks Nugget to his casino manager John Asquaga for $3.75 million. That was a lot of money back in 1960. The arrangement was that there was no down payment and the note had to be paid back in 12 years. John Asquaga paid it back in 7. In 1973, Trader Dick's moved across the street and was assimilated into the Nugget itself. And for the next 40 years, Trader Dick's continued to serve up tiki goodness to the general public in our area. And for many people here, this was their first introduction to the style and to the cuisine and to the drinks. You remember having a scorpion bowl with friends at Trader Dick's? I bet that if you're a Reno local, you probably have one of these mugs on your shelf of tchotchkes. And another cool thing about Trader Dick's was the 6,000-gallon fish tank behind the bar that was actually built around the support columns of Interstate 80. The Interstate's support columns went right through the big fish tank to kind of disguise them. Interstate 80 went right over the building. It's highly unusual for a bar or a restaurant to last as long as Trader Dick's did. It opened in 1958. After John Asquaga sold the Nugget, the new owners took a hard look and made note that the patronage at Trader Dick's was indeed trending downward, and they wanted to appeal to a new demographic anyway. So in 2014, after 56 years, Trader Dick's, the last remaining tiki bar in the Reno area, was slated for closure, and in its place would come Gillies, a country western affair. Shortly before closing day, the wife and I went there and had our last round of tiki goodness at Trader Dick's, and I took these photos of the interior that night. A lot of the decor and memorabilia was auctioned off in the summer of 2014. I was working a 2-month-long photography job in San Diego at the time, or I would have been all over that. Fish from the aquarium went to the big aquarium at Shields Sporting Goods. If you go into the location of the old Trader Dick's in the Nugget today, you can find 2 remaining tikis where they are located originally where they were in Trader Dick's. I hope they just kept these around in tribute to the old Trader Dick's. So now Trader Dick's exists only in our memories. Years ago, I photographed John Asquaga and his family, and I wanted to talk to him about my newfound enthusiasm for the Polynesian pop movement and tiki. And so when he was leaving my studio, I said, "Hey John, there's a big contingent of people out there that really rejoice in Polynesian pop and tiki, and they really appreciate that you've kept this restaurant alive for all these years. And he replied, yeah, it's a nice place. And that's all he had to say about that. And in actuality, the last remaining tiki in Reno can be found at Magic Carpet Golf, which is celebrating its 50th year in business this year. So if you haven't been to Magic Carpet Golf in a minute, go play around, and you can hang out with this here tiki, the one with the eyes that are flood lamps. So you can say hi to him. All right, thanks for hanging out with us today. I hope you learned something about tiki and that whole aesthetic and the history of tiki in Reno. I think it's fascinating. I've been following it for years. Today we're finishing up this episode at Rum Sugar Lime here in Midtown Reno. Rum Sugar Lime, while not technically a tiki establishment, that's not their angle. Their angle actually is quality cocktails, rum-based cocktails. And today I'm enjoying a Missionary's Downfall, a classic tiki offering, and my wife is having a Saturn. So we are gonna see how these are gonna taste, and I guarantee you it's gonna be yummy, yummy. I was also going to talk about the Tiki Village Trailer Park. If you're a longtime Reno person, you probably remember that big old sign way down on South Virginia Street. There was a Tiki Village Trailer Park. I tried to research it. I couldn't find any photographs, but I remember seeing the sign. Maybe you do too. So that's one other reference that we have to Tiki in our community. And if you really like to learn about it, this is the reference right here, the Book of Tiki. If you want to learn even more than what we've talked about today, the Book of Tiki by Sven Kirsten. You can find it hopefully at your local bookstore or Amazon.com, wherever you get books. This is a glorious reference. It's very photo heavy. Lots of photographs from back in the Tiki heyday. So check out the Book of Tiki if you'd like to learn some more information about that. All right, so that's all I've got for you today. I sure appreciate it. Please subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, and please click the little like button. The YouTube algorithm really likes when you click the like button. So, as Harold S. Smith Sr. of Harold's Club always said, I'm with you. Mahalo and cheers.